chance to make it 28-3. Arthur Blank loving it. Up by 25. Toss to White. He's in! What a comeback!
All right, welcome to another episode of the 28-3 podcast. We are here remotely again. One of the last times we're going to do this. I swear to God, we'll be back in person soon enough, right, Corey?
That's right.
As soon as Nick finishes his world tour of traveling for the summer. But
yeah, we have grand plans of being in person, on video. You know, it's our preseason too, right? So we're working out the kinks.
Exactly. So speaking of the preseason, let's talk about the game. So I'll throw it over to Nick, man. Give me some thoughts. I know you watched the game last night. I actually watched it on Saturday night. I guess I was an hour behind the live broadcast. And Corey, have you watched it yet? Or did you?
Yeah, I watched it in full, like, was it last night, the night before? Yeah.
Cool. All right, so all of us have seen it, so let's go ahead and get some thoughts, man. Nick, take it away.
Yeah, I think, it wasn't pretty, obviously, overall. But bright spots, I think the defensive line was probably the biggest bright spot for me. You saw, multiple players. I think Shepard got half a sack. Brzee got back there. Chase Young in a game was great. Granderson got in on a sack as well. I thought they looked really, really good. Most, even when the second and third teams got in, did everything you would expect a pretty good defense to do. Obviously, I'm one of the people who thinks you can't take much stock in any of this, but everything on that side of the ball looked pretty good to me. I didn't see anything that worried me. Glaring negative for last night is the offensive line still. It's about as bad as an offensive line at this level can look, in my opinion. The right side is a disaster right now. Penning doesn't even look like an NFL player, much less a starter at a tackle position. He's lost completely. I don't even understand how we're still rolling him out there as a starter or making an assumption that he can be a starter. He just seems miles and miles away from ready. Now, obviously, you need to get him play time. I get it. Maybe you start playing him these whole games. Yeah, I don't know what to do, but if there's not a backup option in the cards coming via, maybe there's a late preseason cut where we can get a vet, for a year where we don't have to, sign anyone long-term or anything like that. I don't know what's going to be available. I don't think any of us do, but there's no way we can start the season and expect to do anything at all with him as a starter, in my opinion. So I hope they look at that. I hope they address it, whether they decide to trade or anything. I think we've seen us very much focus on youth movement and not signing any long-term deals to older players that we're looking to get out of contracts. So I don't expect us to go find some veteran and even trade for a veteran that, has multiple years left on a deal or anything like that. I think it would just be try and find a 1-year stopgap, deal with this next offseason, but there's no way he can play significant time and us be okay on offense. I didn't think we saw enough from Carr to say one thing or another. To me, the deep ball a lot of people are complaining about, he was getting hit on a Penning, just getting blown up. So that wasn't, to me, on Carr really. The throw to Olave on third down wasn't a great throw. Olave made a good play on that. And he had a couple good throws. There was one play that I thought maybe if he could have hung a quarter second longer was the screen to Kamara. That kind of got blown up. The DE he saw it and he undercut it. But if Carr could have held it for a quarter second and just thrown it over the DE, that would have been a 40-yard play. I think maybe he missed that there. Maybe in the regular season he does hang in there and he tries to complete that play, but it was a beautifully designed play. That play was wide open. And if he could have just completed it. But that's my take.
You said a couple things there that I was thinking the same thing on, where one, with that screenplay, it was like did you really have to give up on it at that point? Like, you see Mahomes, and I know, look, Carr's not Mahomes, obviously, but you see other quarterbacks throw off platform, kind of sidearm it in there even. Like, he could have thrown it, like, taken a step, thrown it around the defensive end. And it kind of, what bugged me about Carr's performance is like, it's preseason. And so to that extent, I'm trying not to overreact. But it's like, he threw the ball like shit. Like, complete dog shit. Like that pass to Olave that you talked about. The good thing about that play was that we saw out of Olave things that we said we need to see more of in games, which is, make a contested catch. If you get your hands on the ball, wrestle it away from the guy. Don't use the excuse of, oh, I'm a smaller receiver, so I can't, be that guy that wrestles the ball away. Like, he fought for that. He came back to it, fought for that ball, and made the completion. But he shouldn't have had to come back to it. That was like that out route. I mean, it's a basic out route. And, we pointed it out. Sharif Halishak had a good camera angle on one of Rattler's throws to Tipton, where Rattler's releasing the ball when Tipton's at the top of his route, his back's still to the quarterback. You throw it with anticipation as a quarterback so that when the receiver gets to where he's going, the ball's there, and the defender can't really get it. Why Carr, a 10-year NFL vet, can't seem to do that play in and play out is really frustrating. And again, maybe it was a byproduct of it being the preseason. But then again, you hear it time and time again from NFL vets, Hall of Famers, coaches. You play in the game how you practice. You play how you practice. So if preseason is quote unquote practice, then practice like you intend to play in the game. Like, don't dial it in, give up early on a screenplay, fail to throw your out route to your number one receiver without any timing. That was and again, I know it's preseason, but the performance from Carr throwing the ball was bothersome to me. And then he does the thing that I think people hate him for most, because I don't think, like, the ire that he gets, I'll go back to it, I don't think it's because of 100% of his play on the field. It's what he says after it. And so what he said after the game really bothered me, because he didn't acknowledge, like, all he had to say was, there's a couple throws I wish I had back, or I could have thrown the ball better. No, he said, the preseason game one wasn't really about, like, how we played. We were just getting out there because it's the first time in a game situation where we could put the communication to the test. And, Klint, he's a good communicator, and I thought we communicated really well. Like, the communication was there. So, the production wasn't what we wanted, but we communicated. I'm like, bitch, like, no one wants to hear about you communicating. We want to see that you can actually put the ball where it needs to go. And that just really, I know, like, and I know this take is one that Max is probably like, who gives a shit? I can see it, but it bothered me. It's like, just, you threw the ball like shit, just own it. And if you're working on communication, that's fine too.
Yeah,
but
I'll say this. Carr is the least of my worries coming out of that game. First and foremost, as Nick said, it's right tackle. Penning doesn't belong on an NFL roster. And, until we see a viable backup plan for him, it's going to be the biggest weak spot on the team. Left guard, troublesome as well. Facts are we have not replaced Pete with anyone that's up to that level yet. Obviously, Saldiveri's been injured, and, we've had to play Lucas Patrick in that spot. But who's going to take Penning's spot? We already know he can't do this. I was reading Underhill's article today about practice, and they're talking about how Penning got blown up by Foskey to the point where the entire field just kind of went quiet and was like, whoa. So it almost seems like he's melting down at this point. The moment is too big for him. The role is too big for him. We see why DA and the rest of the coaches pulled him off the field and basically refused to play him after the first few weeks last season. So that to me is the primary issue. It doesn't matter if you put Mahomes. Well, we can't use Mahomes as an example. If you take any other good quarterback and put him behind that line, they're going to struggle and have issues because that line is not going to be blocking anybody on a consistent basis. Ruiz, it's well documented the struggles Ruiz has had over his career. To his credit, he's turned himself into a serviceable right guard. McCoy is a good center. We know that. Fuaga, he's a rookie. Now, he looked good in the game, and you can see that Fuaga is going to be good. Like, he's already shown us things that Penning hasn't shown us, in 3 years. But you can see it with Fuaga, like, he is going to be good. He's going to have to work out some kinks and all that. But the offensive line is not a strength. I know the fashionable thing right now on Saints Twitter is to call for Rattler and put him, Rattler needs to be on the field. He needs to be the starter. Rattler doesn't need to be the starter right now because you're going to destroy that dude's confidence and probably his health if you put him behind that offensive line.
Yeah.
So,
not behind this offensive line.
I love Rattler.
I
think I was texting both of you that on Saturday night saying, like, this dude has more arm talent than any quarterback in our history. It's up there in that top 10 in the NFL, and you can just see it from how he throws the ball. But that being said, he is not ready to go in and be a starter yet. And they're not going to do that. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's no world where the coaching staff goes, okay, well, let's go ahead and pull Carr and put him on the bench and let's put Rattler in there. We'll go ahead and hitch our wagon to him. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Carr would have to be so god-awful. I mean, like, glaringly god-awful. But more than that, I still agree with the people that say, even if you're drafting a QB in the first round, I still agree with people that say the ideal situation is to have that guy not start right away. If you have a viable starter,
the Kansas City Mahomes approach is the way to go if you can do it.
Yeah. It's not to say roll Trevor Siemian out there and leave your first round guy on the bench. No, we're not saying that. But Derek Carr would have presented the perfect, guy who's there already to allow a first round QB to start. So even if you're treating Spencer Rattler as a first round talent, which a lot of people are anointing him to be.
Hold on. That's unquestionable. He's absolutely a first round talent. Now, is he a first round quarterback is, I guess, the better question.
Right. And I was going to say, I don't disagree with the people that are saying he's got the first round talent. So even if he had been a first round pick, it's still ideal to let him sit and let Carr play the year out. And then he comes back that much better the next year for a myriad of reasons we don't even have time on our rambling tangential podcast to get into.
Yeah, that's a good point. But, I think let him sit is the ideal situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, I brought up Carr because it just bothered me. That was like it. But I agree with you on Penning. I mean, the biggest concern out of the game is still Trevor Penning. I did hear, I forget who it was that said it, but it was like, and this isn't me making an excuse, it's just another example of why it's so concerning with him, is that the way that he played in the game is not the way that he's been practicing. Like, yeah, he's had bad practices, but he still has shown some improvement in the practice. It's been reported he's had some good practices. He's picked up some better techniques, better thought process, but it was kind of like, I wish I could remember who said it, but it was basically like he got thrown into the game in a starting role and he just reverted back to all the bad habits. It was like he like everything he had learned to this point in camp or everything he had improved upon just went right out the window and he was right back to the same dude. Like, that's what's concerning. It's like when you can't even put stock in what you're seeing out of a dude in practice, which is where you're supposed to be able to gauge your team as to, okay, how do they look in practice to know what we think they're going to do on Sunday. You can't even do that.
Let me say this about practice, and this is, so Foskey's been lining up on Penning. You know what I mean? Chase Young's been lining up on Penning a lot of these times. Like, and they're beating him more often than not. So how much of their looking good in practice is relative to them going up against Penning? You know what I mean? This is why the 49ers joint practice getting canceled this week, to me, is a huge detriment to what's going on, because that would have given us a true indicator of where this team stacks up physically going into the regular season. Because I'm telling you, when you put Bosa up against Penning, like right then and there, he might just give up and quit after going through that session. And we have to go ahead and find another right tackle.
He's walking out.
Dude, I mean, that's arguably the most.
I don't know if you saw one good rep.
One.
I don't know if you saw a single
but
good
think about
rep.
That, though. The 49ers have arguably the most talented roster in the league, arguably. Inarguably as a top 5 talented team. If you can line up for joint practices and run all these plays, that is just, you can't put a price on that. And now we're going to miss that. And we're only going to see this limited, maybe the first team goes for a series or two on Sunday during the game. And we're not going to get a true indication of what everything looks like.
Yeah, I was pissed when I saw the news that they called that off. And I mean, not that I've been following the Niners, but I remember when we called it off with the Texans last year, or, mutually, like, it was kind of like national news how many dudes on the Texans were dropping like flies. And I feel like that I haven't really heard that out of San Fran. Like, I know McCaffrey's injured, or at least being held out, and they got the Ayuk situation. But other than that, I haven't really heard much of like substance coming from.
It's nothing major. It's just the small ones are
happened.
stacking up, just like they do on every team. It's not news. It's not anything.
But yeah, so that sucks. And this isn't going to be the Penning podcast. Although if it has to be, it has to be. But I will say, Nick, I saw one what I would call plus rep out of Penning. It was on a run play where he had leverage, he blocked it well off tackle. But then again, but even with that, it doesn't matter. I mean, 1 out of like 12 snaps is horrible, and everybody knows that if he's going to do anything on the plus side, it's going to be run blocking. So it's like, show us, and that's not a starter. You can't have a starter that's one dimensional on the O line. So it's like he had 0+ pass protections that I saw. And then somebody posted on Twitter a cut up of all of his pass reps. And I did that dork thing that I do where I screenshot videos if I see something. Not an O-line guy, so I don't know specifically what they're coaching the O-line. But one thing stood out to me. You always hear they need a wide base on pass protection. There were 8 different plays where his feet, when he was shuffling back, his feet were together. Like he was clicking his heels. Like he was doing some kind of
Well, no, he's like Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz. He's thinking, no place like home, no place like home. Let me get out of here.
Yes. And I'm like, look, I'm not an O-line coach, not an O-line expert, far from it, but that can't be right. At least that amount of times. It was enough to where I was able to do like a little 4-photograph grid twice. And I'm like, this can't be right. And he's getting blown up because of it. And you're like, how is this happening to a dude on this level? Even the third stringer, you wouldn't expect that from.
Let me say this. I know I floated this to both of y'all in our group text thread. Like, to me, the chances are high that Lattimore is not going to be on the team for the 2025 season. So to me, it makes sense. Go ahead and move Lattimore and go get a right tackle or a left guard. Because there's got to be a team that has an extra left guard or just an extra offensive lineman that desperately needs a cornerback, which is a more premium position, that would be willing to make this trade. Where you can get someone who's still in their mid-20s. You know what I mean? I'm not talking like a Pro Bowler. You don't need to get a Pro Bowler out of this. Just get an ascending player who's a solid starter. Because you're going to give Lattimore away for next to nothing next year. I promise you.
Why did they give Andres Pete away for nothing? Someone needs to explain that. The dude's making $3 million. You offered him $5 million. He's here. There's no question about it. You have a completely inept offensive line as a unit, and you let a guy who is versatile and proven to be a starter in the league, and he goes to the Raiders where he may not even be a starter, and you let him walk out for no money when he signed a one-year deal. You didn't have to commit long-term. You didn't have to spend a lot of money. What are they watching from the front office side to think that this was a solution? We've got holes all over the place. It's Penning's horrible, but there's more holes behind Penning.
I just looked it up, and Andres Pete is not a starter for the Raiders. He's the backup left tackle.
Yeah.
So
wow.
It screams like Saints, like Loomis ego to me. Like, fine, Andres, you don't want to take what we're offering. We'll be fine without you. Or it's either that, and I know y'all don't like these types of takes, but it's that Pete was really just tired of this organization, that he was just done. That Pete's just like, you know what, guys, y'all drafted me.
It could absolutely be that. But then there's a third scenario where maybe they really are just trying to get the cap in order. And Pete's contract, it's more than the $3 million that he's making in Oakland, because there's a dead cap from the previous contract. So maybe it truly is, let's get the cap clean and get him off the books. Because he is, 28, 29, 30.
Yeah.
He's close to 30.
Well, he's 30, I think.
What would the cap hit have been if we'd have kept him? or
if we cut him and signed him back after we cut him.
Yeah, it would have been
we
higher.
Took all that. If we went back,
it would have been more than $3 million.
Because we know from the Simmons sweepstakes that we have 13, and after the Warner re-sign or extension that we have 13 in space. So I wonder how much of that space he would have eaten up.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Simmons thing. We don't need Simmons. This team isn't going anywhere. There's no reason to unless Simmons wants to come here on a 1-year contract. There's no reason to sign this dude to like a 3 or 4 year deal, which is by all accounts is what he's looking for.
Simmons is the type of signing you make if you're the team that's quote unquote, one piece away. Like when we signed Sharper to the Super Bowl squad, it was like he made a difference.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's a great point. That's exactly what he is. And look, I'm gonna tell you right now. Last year, the last 2 years, it's leading up to the next draft. It was always Brock Bowers, no matter what. I think for the 2025 draft, it's about to be Will Campbell, no matter what. The LSU offensive lineman, like. I'm okay desperately need another top-end offensive tackle who came from a good conference and has played actual NFL competition. I'm sure, Nick, you do fine with Will Campbell at this point, right? Next year?
Of course, I just don't understand how we addressed this offseason. And we knew this was the problem. And yes, we used the first-round pick on Fuaga. Good pick. We did nothing else in the draft. We did nothing really in free agency but bring in backups.
That tells me they're just trying to get the cap in line. I don't know. And they know we're not.
Yeah,
maybe, but you're going to get people killed too.
If it's Carter that gets killed, I'm fine with it. Don't get Rattler killed.
Well, not when Rattler goes in and then he gets killed.
I think they'd put Hainer in next. Hainer looks good. Look, Hainer looks solid. He's not. We can't just like shove him off. He looks like an NFL quarterback. Maybe not a starter, but he looks like a 10-year backup quarterback who's going to make probably $30 million.
That's the flip side of the Rattler hype, which look, I think it's fun. I think seeing what Rattler's doing is great. We haven't had
which we need.
Yeah. Well, we haven't drafted a QB who's looked like this
ever
since, Manning, and I wasn't alive for that. But the flip of that is, Hainer looked good. I mean, he looked solid. But like you said, Max, whether or not it means he could ever be your future dude, I think obviously you see more of that in Rattler, but Hainer looks solid. I mean, that bomb to A.T. Perry, he threw the ball 65 yards in the air, which is impressive for his frame. But it was a 58-yard catch, but it went 65.
I don't know. He was right at the line, man. That fucker. He was going forward and like he did with everything he had. Either way, 58-yard pass in the air. Impressive pass.
Yeah. And it was what he did before. It wasn't like he had a clean pocket. Like he decided, all right, I'm stepping up in the pocket.
It looked like Breeze.
Pressure, and
it looked like vintage Breeze. Stepping up in pressure and making a killer throw.
And it was like Breeze plus because Breeze has definitively never thrown a football that far in a Saints uniform. Not that far. You won't find it.
He could have done it back in like 09, 10, 11. He could have done that.
No question.
Yeah, no question.
No question. He could have made that throw.
It was 58 yards in the air. It was 58 yards in the air.
I'm not saying Breeze couldn't throw a deep ball, but
first of all, it was 58 yards in the air, has been documented.
It was a 58-yard play, which means it could not have categorically gone 58 yards in the air. He threw it from the middle of the field.
He was right at the line. He was right at the line.
Max's geometry.
He was right at the line. People who have charted the game have said it was 58 yards.
Okay.
He got a few yards after the catch.
He got about 4 or 5 yards as he went out of bounds. Either way, not to take away from the pass, very impressive pass.
The one negative I'll say about that pass is I think he could have thrown
more
it
to the inside
on time. No, before having to step up. I think he could have planted and thrown it. If you watch the route, just AT, he breaks open very early. And if you get it out earlier, it may have been a potential touchdown.
Yeah.
So now he did a great job once he didn't get it out, climbing the pocket and making up. It was a perfect throw. It was great.
It was a great play, and we're not knocking it at all. But to your point, it could have been a touch earlier, and it's probably a TD. But either way, amazing throw. And back to the original point, Hainer, to me, his ceiling, actually, no, his floor is 10-year backup. Like, this dude's going to be in the NFL in 2035. I promise you he's going to be on a roster somewhere making $1 million, making probably $1.5 million, $2 million just to ride the pine. Now, Rattler on the other hand, has the talent We don't know if he has the makeup yet. We don't know if he has everything else, the intangibles and all that. But the talent is there for him to be a top It's there for him to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, still a long way to go.
Yeah, exactly. Not saying he's going to do it because I have no clue, but the talent is absolutely there. There's not many quarterbacks that can do what he can do.
On the spectrum of a successful career starter in the NFL, we are at like the first tick mark of, like the smallest beginnings of the timeline, but the beginnings look good so far.
The other two things I think we at least need to discuss is the run game didn't look great, and A.T. Perry looked like a completely different person than what's being reported all over from everybody.
Yeah.
He must just be – he's a gamer. He just doesn't – he's Allen Iverson. He doesn't give a fuck about practice.
Yeah, I think he's a gamer. It's kind of like Steph Curry, too, where like he needs to see the ball go in the bucket, and then from there he's good. Like Ross Jackson was reporting that today he apparently had an excellent practice. He did leave early, but they were saying in practice today he picked up where he left off in the game, which was encouraging to hear. Because like you said, Nick, in practice, the reports were just like, meh. They were unlike Max's fictional reports of Willie Gay being just okay, which we can get to.
Gay had a fantastic game, but by all accounts, Pete Werner has outperformed him in training camp. Now, the game, Gay was better. Gay was fantastic.
So that might be a good segue. I want your thoughts on Willie Gay's.
Oh, he was fantastic.
Game. I mean,
he was fast. He was everywhere. He was wreaking havoc. Exactly what you want to see.
Yeah. And I bring this up to our, some background for our listeners, because we might have to do if there's a way to do a text message podcast. I feel like we have entire episodes over our group text, but the question was, is Willie Gay doing just okay?
No. To be fair, the original point was Werner has outperformed Gay to this point in training camp and has earned his new contract. That was the original point.
Well, yeah,
that's what I said.
The extension shows you what they think.
No, I said it shows you what they think of Werner. I said Gay came in. They brought Gay in to push Werner. That's pretty much indisputable. And he pushed Werner, and Werner has elevated his play. And the Saints obviously saw enough to say, you know what? Let's go ahead and give him a contract extension before the season even starts, like they did with Granderson last year on one of their, let's hope we're buying a little bit lower than would have to after the season if he has a big year.
Yeah, and I think they did.
To me, it's a smart saying.
Say something on Pete. I know there was Max has always said that's why they brought in Gay. Maybe it was an insurance plan for Pete. I don't know. Maybe it's to push him, whatever. I just think I think DA likes Werner a lot, and I do too. As you all know, I've said that for a long time. There's no way they were letting him go. He's 20. I think he's 24 only.
24, 25.
I feel like they want to build around Pete. And I think he's played better than some of the criticism he's gotten too. He hasn't made enough big plays. That's fair to say. But the guy's played pretty damn solid, plays well in coverage, plays sideline to sideline, does pretty much everything you would want from his position. Not always perfect, but you can see he's got the skill set to do pretty much anything at the position. Yeah. And I think the other part of that text exchange was, and I think both Corey and I thought a main reason to bring him in is because how we got killed by running quarterbacks in recent years. And maybe there's a 3 linebacker set that would be used from time to time to help, stop that. We got beat up by that again in the preseason game. They ran all over us. The quarterbacks had 50 yards and like a 6-yard average, I think, again. So that would be the one negative I'd say on the defense is the scrambling was again just picking up big yards, couple on third down. So that worries me, but I think it's a luxury to have Gay. Obviously, I think he will see snaps. I don't think he's a better player than Pete, but if he was brought here to push Pete and they feel like he elevated, great. I think the contract's a great contract. It's essentially slightly more than what Caden Ellis got. And I would have thought Pete would have demanded more than that in the open market. So I feel real good about that. The Granderson contract worked out. I think this one probably works out. And he's a young dude. He can stay around if we have to rebuild for a couple years. We've got him for the next 4, essentially.
Yeah.
Plenty of time to stick around and still be a force for a good team.
Yeah,
in
and to echo your point, the linebackers look fantastic as a whole. Hudson looked good. They were all performing in the game. The secondary, I think we need to give a shout out to as well. Rico Payton, he was fantastic. John Charles, all these guys that you don't normally see because Lattimore obviously didn't play. So the secondary is a strength. I don't know if we even need Justin Simmons at this point. To Corey's point earlier, that's the kind of signing you make when you're a player away from really making a push into the playoffs. And obviously, I don't think any of us really think that we're there right now. There were a lot of positives, especially on defense. The offensive line, that's such a big detriment if they're not good. It's just like last season where we were very adamant during the preview episode talking about this offensive line is going to sink or swim the season. And this year, I would elevate that even more. It's going to be
It's way worse of an offensive line going into this season than last season.
God, there was some point, I don't remember what episode it was. It was in probably late September, early October of last year. When I told you, I was like, I would be fine picking offensive line with every single pick in our draft. And I was half joking, but this year coming up, I'm dead serious. I would take offensive line with every freaking pick. We need it. Our offensive line, God, it's fucking terrible.
Let's ask you this. So we know it looks like shit right now. Do you think this team could win games with the defense being the focus of the team if they just got serviceable people on the offensive line?
Yeah, they could win games.
And get to an offense.
I don't think you're winning more than 9 games.
I think
doing that.
I think serviceable.
You're just saying scrap it.
I'm not saying scrap it. I'm saying
right.
let's. I mean, they're going to have they can't scrap it, but there's really not anyone they can bring in. There's nobody available, and anyone that gets cut,
Right. We're looking at final cuts. There's going to be a serviceable guy or two that will get cut. That's for sure.
We're looking for cap casualty cuts.
Correct.
Only.
Yeah, but most of those happen in June, so there'll be 1 or 2. But man,
so that's my question. Do you go get
you
them?
have
Do you
to,
go
or Carr's
get
going to
them?
die, or whoever the quarterback is going to die.
Yeah. I hope they do. I hope they go get them.
Now, let me say this. Talking about the offense as a whole, there's a lot of talk about what plays the offense decided to run. Now, before I get into that much further, obviously, a pass block is a pass block. Pass protection is pass protection. If Penny can't hold up as a right tackle in pass protection, it doesn't matter if you ran an exotic play or
100%.
non-exotic play. And apparently the defensive end that gave him a lot of trouble as a rookie. It's like, come on, man. But as far as whether or not we thought the offense, quote unquote, looked good against Arizona, I put a little bit of stock in it. I'd say a decent amount. But they didn't run anything close to what the Kubiak that was not the Kubiak offense that we saw for the first 2 series.
Yeah, they didn't game plan anything.
So I don't know that. Right. So I don't know that I'm saying, the offensive line is still a concern, but I don't know that I'm so concerned about the offense as a whole. I still think there's some ability of Kubiak to coach around deficiencies that are on the line to at least more so than last year help the struggles that are there. I don't know that it's not a fix-all, but I think what we saw Saturday was not indicative of what we're going to see, against Carolina and their on.
I'm just anxious to watch them on Sunday. That 49ers defensive front is nasty. And if Fred Warner plays a few snaps, if Bosa plays a few snaps, that's going to be interesting. Yeah. And look, I get what you're saying.
They're going to have to show some of
They didn't scheme anything.
Looks.
They weren't running the true offense. They were just basically lining up and just going through basic sets.
Agree. Yeah, I get worried when you can't make a 5-step
exactly.
drop.
That's what I was about to say. That worries me even more because basic shit, Penning can't do it, and the left guard can't do it either.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That can't go.
That's
away.
a physicality thing.
That's gonna It's hard to coach out of that. Sure, play action will buy you some time, motion, chip block. There's ways to hide it or to help it a little bit, but at the end of the day,
To your point, if you're scheming around it in the regular season, which they're going to have to do at this point, they're just going to have to. You're looking at the tight ends being a complete non-factor again because they're going to be left in to assist Penning or whoever it is.
Or you're taking away a potential faster dude because they ran two tight end sets on offense. I noticed a little bit more than you saw last year. They rolled out Foster
Holker.
And I guess it was Jacobson.
Holker. That one, Holker.
Holker, yeah, Foster and Holker at the same time. But if you're leaving one of them in the block, that means you're deciding to either go with a single back or no slot, or both.
I mean, that's the reality we're looking at. You're going to see a skill position player, most likely a tight end, is going to get basically removed from the passing game because they're going to have to be the crutch for Penning or whoever it is. Because Oli Udo ain't much better.
Yeah, he had 2 penalties in a row. It's like,
dude, look, there's a real scenario this season where, I mean, if there's one injury on the offensive line, imagine if McCoy gets hurt or Fuaga gets hurt.
Ugh.
Dude.
But that's a great point. I think people are
if Fuaga gets hurt,
it's dead.
Yeah.
If Fuaga's hurt, Carr is going to be hurt pretty.
We have no one who can play tackle. Yeah.
Dude, there's a scenario, man. I know we all looked at the schedule, and I don't remember what we picked on the initial run through. I want to say I had 7 or 8 wins. If Fuaga gets hurt, that shit drops off by 3 or 4, depending on what time of the year it is. Like it's,
yeah. Andrews Pete didn't walk through that door.
Dude, we're at DEFCON 2 right now on the offensive line. That shit hits 1 pretty quickly, meaning season over.
Yep.
So, I don't know. But, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. What are you guys looking for?
Yeah, on that
what are you guys looking for in this weekend's game on Sunday? What do you want to see?
I'll say first, since I was kind of like just there, I do want to see us open up the playbook a little bit more. You can't hide from the fact that you have certain plays for that much longer. It's going to be probably your last chance to get any series at all with the starters in, and you just had the joint practices taken away. So, man up, call your real plays, at least for 2 series, and see, hey, again, it bothered me with Carr saying hey, we got the communication down. All right, you got the communication down. That's what you want to talk about. Then show us you got the communication down on your real plays. Okay,
Carr's the least of our problems.
At least 2 series. I'm not saying it's a big problem. I'm just saying
I know it does. I know it was bothersome. Look, I don't like Carr either. I don't like Carr either, and I know you despise him more than anyone that's on this panel right now. But Carr's the least of our issues, and I would be the first to kick him out the door and let Rattler play. No, but
that's not me. That's not me saying he's an quote unquote an issue. And honestly, I don't even like the unabashed Carr hate. I think there's actually too much of it out there, undeserved. But it's because he says that stupid shit. After he throws horrible passes, goes 2 for 6. He's like, yeah, we were just working on communication out there. Well, all right, real game. Show us that you can run the real offense. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I'll say this. I know you're referencing more the comments after the Falcons game last year about the safety. What was it, Bates? When he's like, well, he wasn't where he was supposed to be. Well, that's right. That to me is reprehensible, and I agree with you on that. When he says shit like that, it's infuriating. I didn't hear anything in the post-game press conference this week that bothered me. Maybe I didn't catch it, but nothing he said this week was anywhere near that, because that was just disgusting.
Well, that was obviously disgusting. It was a regular season game. It was an obvious mistake. I'm usually I know out of the 3 of us, I probably dog on Carr the most, but that's really not that bad of a standard considering the rest of Saints Nation and Saints Twitter.
Oh, Saints Twitter is ridiculous.
Honestly,
right now.
Saints Twitter is ridiculous. So I'm not even 50% of where Saints Twitter is. I want to see Carr do well. He doesn't bother me that much as a player. It's just it's bothersome when he doesn't at least just say yeah, my bad, or bad throw, didn't throw well, and he goes to talking about how they're. I mean,
I'll meet you halfway on this one. This one didn't bother me, but I get what you're saying, that he doesn't handle these situations as well as he should. Right, but this situation didn't get as much. But Nick, what are you looking for this weekend?
Blocking.
There you go.
Just block somebody. Just a little bit. Just show us that like we're all not going to die. Do something well on the offensive line. I agree. It'd be cool to see them put in a little bit of the offense. That'd be nice to see. But I'd also like to just see them be able to block the basic plays. Just a standard, one-on-one situation with Penning and a end, and just see them not get blown backwards would be great. Or if we do something different with the line, we shake up where people are and we see something positive there. That would be the best case scenario for me this week.
Yeah, I think for me, I just, to echo what you said, I want to see blocking. Just execute the basic pass blocks, basic run blocks. I also want to see something out of Foskey. Foskey played damn near the entire game this week and did basically
zero
nothing.
impact.
I don't think he had a single pressure. And he's going against guys that are going to be working for UPS in about 3 weeks. Other than that, I'd like to see Rattler be the second QB up and get on the field with some of the guys who are a little higher up on the depth chart and just kind of see what he can do with that. But
Yep. They'll probably do that at some point.
From what I've heard, it seems like that might be the route they take this week. Get Rattler to be second off the bench or first off the bench. So we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But any closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
Not for me. That wraps it up.
Yeah, I mean, just again, hopefully they do more, open up the playbook more against the Niners. Because, like you said, Max, that's some good competition. You can get some really good looks against. So, and I would like to see people stop dropping like flies at camp. I know it's every year, but
yeah, I mean that's every year. As long as it's nothing season ending, we haven't seen anything like that yet. Other than Ramczyk, but we knew Ramczyk wasn't going to play this year anyway. So there hasn't been anything yet, knock on wood, that's been unexpected. So we'll see. But other than that, we'll catch you guys next week after the game. We'll do a recap episode and talk about the third preseason game. Who dat?
What a comeback!